Good afternoon. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp about to give us an update on COVID-19 across our state, as well as protests following the death of George Floyd. The governor.
Homer Bryson and General Tom Carden. Also, we have Colonel Gary Val, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Wright, and Captain Nikki Renfro with the State Patrol, Department of Safety. We got the Department of Corrections Commissioner Tim Ward and the Assistant Commissioner Ahmad Holt with us today. Also, Department of Juvenile Justice Commissioner Tyrone Oliver, Department of Natural Resources Commissioner Mark Williams, GBI Director Vic Reynolds, and Special Agent in Charge Debbie Gardner. Before we get started on the weekly COVID-19 briefing, I wanted to take a few moments to address the protests that we've seen in communities across our nation. As I said over the weekend, this is a deeply emotional time, not only in Georgia, but across America. We are gripped by a global pandemic. COVID-19 has threatened the health and well-being of our families and communities. Here in Georgia, this healthcare crisis has created economic hardship. Our unemployment numbers and uncertainty are sky high right now. And during this unprecedented moment, we have witnessed injustice with our own eyes. Georgians are filled with fear, anger, and righteous impatience. I realize that people are hurting and have more questions than answers right now. I support the right to peacefully protest, to honor the life of George Floyd, and to demand action. As the cradle of the civil rights movement, this place where peaceful protest ultimately shook up the status quo, the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., this is a city where his legacy looms, urging us all to seek justice, love mercy, and treat others fairly with kindness and respect. And what started as a peaceful protest Friday ended in violence and destruction. A powerful moment was ultimately corrupted by some with a different agenda. And from the start, we have worked with Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms' office and local law enforcement to provide assistance and support. At their request, I have deployed the Georgia National Guard and hundreds of law enforcement officials to key locations across the city. And over the past several days, we have provided reinforcements to Atlanta, as well as communities across Georgia to enhance public safety and preserve peace. I cannot tell you how proud I am of the men and women who, at a moment's notice, were on the ground working to protect not only people, but property. And let me be clear, I am outraged that Georgians are now in harm's way because some are using this moment to riot, to loot, and to compromise the safety of our citizenry. I will tell you that violence and destruction is unacceptable. We will continue to do our part in conjunction with local leaders to plan, mobilize, and respond appropriately to threats that undermine our safety. We will do whatever is necessary to keep the peace. That being said, I still have hope that we can emerge from this stronger than ever before and more united than ever before. I truly believe that our best and brightest days are before us, and they are still to come. This is a moment to unite Georgians and find solutions to the problems that we face. We have overcome incredible challenges in this city and in this state together. I know that most are trying to protest in a productive way without compromising the safety of others. One story we were actually made aware of that happened yesterday. There was a group of peaceful protesters moving down Auburn Avenue as we neared the curfew. GPS troopers were on hand because that section of the street is close to the interstate. The troopers reported to the leader of that group to remind fellow protesters of the curfew and asked them to leave once they got back to their cars after a successful, peaceful day. And that is exactly what they did. These are the kind of folks who are having their voices heard and inspiring real change. Them doing things the right way, but also speaking out against the injustice that we have witnessed. In regards to our law enforcement and state personnel, I want to thank all of the men and women who are working night and day with very little rest here in the State Operations Center and those that are out in the field of battle. I have never been more proud in my life, other than maybe when my children were born. We can't thank you enough for the service and sacrifice that you are giving to our state and our local as we speak. I also want to thank all of the local leaders, the members of the Georgia National Guard, our community leaders, and citizens who have helped us prepare for nonviolent protest and mobilize the right resources on the ground. Over the past few days, your partnership has been truly invaluable. On Thursday in Brunswick, as you know, Gregory and Travis McMichael will appear for preliminary hearings following their arrest for the death of Ahmaud Arbery. We will have a strong state law enforcement presence in the region to support the local government, including the Georgia State Patrol, the Department of Natural Resources officers, Georgia Guard troops, GEMA officials, and other related state agencies. And we will take the appropriate actions to hold bad actors accountable if they try to infiltrate what has been very peaceful gatherings in that community for well over a month now. And let me be clear once again, we will not tolerate disruptive or dangerous behavior, including criminal conduct. And we will put the safety of our citizens first. In a few moments, I'm going to ask Dr. Toomey to come up and address the expected impact of the protest over the weekend on our COVID-19 numbers, based on her expertise in public health and as an epidemiologist. We've obviously been monitoring the impact and are concerned about it. I want to let everyone know that we encourage all law enforcement, along with those that are participating in the demonstrations, to get tested immediately. Dr. Toomey is working closely with Dr. Paxson at the Fulton County Board of Health to establish pop-up testing sites next week. As we take measured steps forward to put Georgians back to work, we continue to see positive progress in our fight against COVID-19 with increased bed capacity, reduced hospitalizations, and a decreasing percentage of positive cases out of total cases. As we continue to be grateful for our partnerships with local hospitals who are on the front lines battling this virus and supporting their efforts, we are supporting their efforts. To date, we have distributed more than 18,440 vials of remdesivir, and we're receiving another 4,520 vials today. Hospitals continue to report initial positive results from this treatment, and we remain hopeful that more treatments like it are on the way. And while encouraging, we'll continue to monitor the key metrics. And as usual, we will continue to use data, science, and the advice of Dr. Toomey and her team to chart the path forward. Over the past 3 months, Dr. Toomey and her team and the district health director staff at the local departments of health have worked tirelessly to respond to COVID-19. They have established 150 testing sites, conducted more than 151,000 tests, and continue to be an integral part of our response to this crisis. And their hard work certainly continues. One thing that I did want to make you aware of is that you may see a temporary decline in the number of tests administered due to the National Guard's role in assisting local law enforcement with the recent protest activities. These men and women in uniform will return to fulfill their original mission when the streets are safe. Today, several new improvements were made at on the DPH COVID-19 Daily Status Report page. As I've said numerous times, citizens and members of the press need accessible, timely, and accurate data. These changes will make the DPH webpage more user-friendly while providing a comprehensive picture of where we are in our fight against COVID-19. The webpage will now update once daily at 3 p.m. Again, the updates will now start at 3 p.m., allowing DPH officials more time to process and confirm lab and public health lab reports on cases. DPH has reordered some key metrics to make the data more easily digestible, and the website now provides a breakdown of testing based on molecular and serological test, along with the percent positive for each type of test. As well, the demographic charts have been redesigned to clearly present the data in a more user-friendly manner. And before I turn it over to Dr. Toomey, I want to renew a few calls of action. Please continue to follow advice and mitigate your risk of exposure. We're still battling a pandemic, and we need to stay vigilant. Continue to keep your distance, wash your hands, and do all of the other things that we have been saying for weeks and weeks now. A little bit of good news from the last couple of weeks of my urging and others. We are starting to see more patients return for regular screenings, but we're also seeing an increase in more serious diagnoses because people have delayed their medical intervention. So again, I want to all Georgians, don't skip your medical appointments. If you put them off, please reschedule now. Do not take your individual health for granted. There are medical facilities all across the state, whether private practice, hospitals, or the like, are ready for you to come back in a safe way. I would urge you to call them or get in touch with them on the way to do that will prioritize your personal health. Again, we are in this fight together, the fight against the coronavirus, the fight to revive our economy, and the fight to ensure liberty and justice for all. I know for one that I will continue to keep the men and women who these folks, many of them, are managing and have been the last several days on the front line of a lot of districts. I want to thank them, and I want to thank all of those that are under their leadership, that are out there now, that are at home resting and will be back later tonight, who will be here tomorrow and the next day and the next day, until we can get back to a normal place in this state, in this country, of not having to defend our streets, our citizens, and our storefronts from unruly people. These are resilient people. I've been in here every night with them, long into the morning. If those people that are unruly out there think that we will lay down and we will quit, you are in the wrong state. So thank you. You will continue to be in my prayers. And I will continue to pray for peace and justice and a better and brighter tomorrow. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Toomey.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone here in the room and behind me for the work that you're doing to keep all of Georgia safe. I've been asked many times today and over the last several days about what could this impact be of demonstrations and mass gatherings on a pandemic. And I think this situation is no different than any other situation we have talked about. When you have this many people gathered together in close proximity, you run the risk of viral transmission. I think you add to that the fact that individuals have come from out of state, where they may be have even higher rates of infection and may be bringing it into our state and transmitting it as well. And so I think that we need to be very vigilant. We are proactively doing our analysis of our hotspots, because the situation is here not only in Atlanta, but all the other locations where there have been peaceful protests, but also disruptions. We need to follow that and monitor that. The things that we testing for the demonstrators, and we do that willingly and gladly, and we'll set up one or more test sites as necessary to ensure that they are protected and identify any cases early. We are also proactively reached out to Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms' office, and with her approvals, we are moving forward with setting up testing for her first responders, both Atlanta Police and Fire, and others who may have been potentially exposed. And we hope to do that as early as next week in conjunction with the mayor's office. And last but not least, I have reached out and hope to set up testing sites for the state police, as well as National Guard and others who may be part of this response team. We want to ensure that everyone who may be exposed unwittingly, also has access to testing quickly, and that we can assist in this time to mitigate any potential spread from this demonstration. We want to avoid these disruptions, but most of all, in addition, we want to ensure that the pandemic doesn't spread because of this. Thank you so much.
Greg, you want to start us off?
No, you're good. Unless all the reporters want to hear your question.
Governor, what do you plan to do in terms of the George Floyd protests to reach out to some of the demonstrators and address their concerns? And is there a potential for legislation this session to address those concerns?
Well, certainly, on the legislative session part of it, look, there's all kind of things that are flying around right now, and our office is open to all of them. I've said that before and continue to say that. From my personal standpoint, I'm open to that as well. And we have some folks that are starting to think about that. But I'll be honest with you, our number one priority right now has been keeping our people safe and keeping the protesters safe, quite honestly, because what we're seeing on the streets, is you have a bunch of people that are really upset, and I understand that. As I mentioned in my remarks, we've all seen injustice with our own eyes. If anybody's watched the video of Mr. Floyd, and we understand the reason that people are mad and they're upset. And the thing is, a lot of people were upset and worried, and there was a lot of tension even before this happened because of the pandemic. So it's just an unusual time in our state and in our country. And we have been I've been talking back and forth with a lot of the folks that are helping. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but some of the folks that are organizing the protests. We're talking to them on the ground every day. They've actually been very helpful communicating with me to let me know what groups are on the ground that are peaceful, and then which are groups that they have concerns about that they don't want their folks being too close to because they know that they're unruly. And that doesn't go to Atlanta, that goes for other parts of the state today as well. So that is kind of my posture right now.
When the situation is calm, do you intend to have a dialogue with the organizers of these protests to hear out their concerns?
Well, I'm certainly open to having a dialogue with anybody that wants to have that, if they're willing to do it in a productive way. I mean, I think that's what government's all about. I've always done that. When I was Secretary of State, I did it as a state senator, and I look forward to continuing to do that as governor. Richard?
Governor, we've heard many theories of who may or may not be behind this either in GMO, or GBI, or DPH, or rather DPS. Have we heard, is there any single organized group behind it? Multiple organized groups? Or is it just a group of anarchists who decided to get together and do this?
Yeah, I've been trying to get where I could get something in my speech today to mention that directly, and I couldn't get the green light to do that because I don't know that we've got confirmation. I might just let Vic or his team, if y'all want to answer what you've been tracking and what you're still working on.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Vic Reynolds, the GBI director. We certainly have some intelligence indicating various groups that are here, both through social media that our intelligence unit reviews on an hourly basis since this situation started, and also regarding information about people who are here on the ground that we know belong to certain organizations. I don't want to misspeak or speak on something we're not categorically sure of now, but I will tell you that we are convinced that based on the information intelligence we have, there are individuals here from various groups around the country, a lot of which are bent primarily on destruction and violence. And so we're seeing that both in our intelligence gathering, our social media posts that we review daily, and what our agents and various officers have seen actually boots on the ground. Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor.
Questions for Dr. Toomey. On the newly updated website, it says there are 48,207 confirmed cases, but then right below it with a different type of testing, those two numbers don't add up to the number that's on the top. So I was hoping you could explain where those numbers come from before other people start asking.
All right, the website went up at 3. I haven't seen it yet, but the tests are broken up into the serologic tests are in one category, the PCR or the COVID genetic test is in another category, and total tests are all those two tests together. Positives are only the PCR tests. We don't count the serology tests in any positives. But the total tests would include everything, but you broken out into the serologic tests and the PCR tests, which are the tests for infection now versus tests for past infection.
Well, if that's true, those numbers still don't add up to be the same.
I'll have to look because you beat me to the website. I was preparing for the press conference, and it I think went live just an hour ago or less.
And then,
Governor, two quick questions, if I might. President Trump last night called for more law enforcement presence across the country. Do you see any need for more law enforcement, either police, National Guard, or federal military assistance from what has already been called up?
Here in Georgia?
Here in Georgia.
No, I do not. If General Cardin tells me we need something, I'll start worrying about it. But I don't think he's even close to telling me that we need anything, do you, General?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, a follow-up question. Has Georgia been asked to send National Guard troops to Washington, D.C.? If so, are we doing that? How many?
I don't know if we've gotten a formal request. I can let General Cardin mention or speak more to that. I mean, we certainly stand willing to work with the president. They have certainly been very gracious in what they have allowed us to do with the Guard during the COVID-19 response. I believe the Georgia National Guard's done as much as any Guard across the country in response to COVID-19, and the administration's support has been a big part of that from a financial standpoint, but just having the ability to do that. And Georgia has a long track record of supporting our country with military support from the National Guard, and we'll continue to do so, whether that's building the wall like General John King, our insurance commissioner, was part of his mission, the folks that we've had over in Iraq and Afghanistan that I've sent off and welcome back to this great state, and we'll continue to do so if there's another mission. But do you have anything else on that, General?
Thanks. I'll just echo what the governor said. I mean, there's been some discussion about how many National Guard troops might be needed in the District of Columbia, but there's been no formal request, if you will, for those numbers. But, under the governor's leadership, we stand ready to do whatever we're told to do. I mean, we've been authorized up to 3,000. There are 15,000 men and women in your National Guard, so we've got plenty of capability on the table if it's required. I hope that answers your question.
Art?
Governor Kemp, after we did our interview yesterday afternoon, there was that commotion in City Hall. We walked through the protest. It started peaceful, and certainly not in all the cops. There are a lot of cops that are passionate. We got stuck in that commotion for an hour, and a lot of the protesters were simply saying, why are we being arrested? And what do you want to tell some of those cops who are arresting journalists and citizens for just peacefully protesting?
Well, first of all, Arch, I don't believe we arrested a journalist.
An AJC reporter was held and we had 11
Well,
bodies.
being held is a lot different than being arrested. I've asked Commissioner Williams to look into that. But what specifically, I need to know more specifics about what you're talking about at City Hall as to why people were being arrested. And who was...
A block, and they couldn't get out. So basically, these people were saying they were protesting. We were stuck in there for an hour, and they didn't know why. So I think you tweeted there were 55 arrests. Do you know why they were arrested?
This is the same group that went on the interstate?
We're not on the interstate by then.
What time was this now?
This was shortly after our interview with you and Dr. Toomey, about 4 o'clock.
And where were you again?
It was... People just could not get out.
Were they Atlanta Police Department?
Atlanta Police, the National Guard, yeah, those are...
Okay, who in the arrest?
Atlanta Police.
Okay, have you asked the mayor that?
We've asked the
Or
mayor
the
that.
chief, and what did they tell you? Because I'm not in
We've not
charge.
already responded.
Well,
We're just asking...
I'm not in charge of the Atlanta Police Department. We're serving in a backup role. I don't believe there's any state in the country that's done as much as we have to support a major city like Atlanta. Quite honestly, sometimes at the detriment of other parts of our state. We could have our troopers right now on our highways. But if there's a specific reason that the Atlanta Police Department were arresting people, I know for a fact I saw people laying down in the middle of the street in front of City Hall. And I would hope that you would agree with me that that's not a good thing for people to do. It's against the law, I would think, in the city. I know it going on the interstate is against state law. It's dangerous for the people that are doing that, and it ties up a lot of police resources to have to deal with situations like that, not to mention our friends that have been working and may have been trying to get home at that hour, who are very upset, and they get frustrated, which causes the potential protesters harm for laying in the road. And this is the point of what is so difficult about this mission that I quite honestly think citizens need to understand. We have no problem. We have supported for weeks in this state peaceful protest. You haven't heard about any of these problems in Brunswick, Georgia, where Captain King of the Georgia State Patrol and Neil Jump, the sheriff down there, have been working with the local community, the organizers, to have peaceful protests, to protect them with a heavy law enforcement presence that nobody could see. So nobody felt threatened, so we could support their activities to gather and call for justice, as they should. And that is exactly what I told Vic Reynolds to do, and is exactly what I believe Joyette Holmes will do. But we have to have people follow the law. And when they don't, it puts us in a bad spot. And when you have unruly people that are mixing in, and you see them on camera loading rocks in their backpack, loading wood in their backpack, in that same area by the Capitol where we had to shoot tear gas because a car was parked jackknife in the middle of an intersection, and the guy got out and is standing up on the hood of the car, creating disruption. And then people in the background are putting on additional clothing. They're stealing cones off the street to direct traffic so that when the tear gas goes out, they can sit the cone and pour a bottle of water on it to put it out. Those are not people here to peacefully protest. They are here to disrupt, to injure the men and women that are on the streets trying to keep the peaceful protesters safe. They're carrying around milk because they're not going to run when the gas hits and goes home after the curfew. they're going to go pick the gas up and throw it back at the law enforcement officials. It simply would be doing nothing if they had abided by the curfew. That is what we're asking people to do. We are in a very precarious point right now because you have one or two people that are going to cause an instance like we've seen in other states where somebody gets shot. We had a perfectly innocent Atlanta police officer get hit on a four-wheeler. You should watch the video on Facebook. It is a miracle he is alive. And he's alive because we had the National Guard there. And their medic team got there probably in less than a minute or two, tourniqueted him, and the Atlanta police blocked every intersection to get him to Grady. And we continue to pray for him. But that is why we need people to work with us on organized, peaceful protest. And don't lie down in the street. Nobody had any issues moving around yesterday until they started lying down or getting on the interstate. I mean, that is not a safe environment. It's not safe. It's not fair to our other citizens who are trying to get home or trying to get their kids out of harm's way.
This is a question for Colonel Val and General Cardin. Can you talk about the fatigue factor for your folks, not just physical fatigue, but mental fatigue, having to be out there doing this every night?
Thank you. We're giving them rest as often as we can, providing them meals, hydration. They're holding up good. This is what we train to do, and we keep that in mind, their health in mind. So they're holding up good. Mentally, they're good. The governor and I spoke with a crowd of them last night at the Capitol. Their spirits are high. They're here because we ask them to, but in mind and spirit, they're here also.
Okay, we are now pulling away from the press conference of the governor, and just a few key action items to pass on to you in the summation. First of all, the governor, of course, is outraged by the videotaping of the death of George Floyd. He's proud of the deployment of the National Guard and the action of first responders. He's outraged at the looters. He is praising again and again peaceful protest. On that note, on Thursday, Brunswick will have a strong police presence, says the governor, as the men charged with the death of Ahmaud Arbery have a court hearing. As for COVID-19, the one thing I pulled out of that that's new and updated is, as for COVID-19 treatment, more than 18,000 remdesivir doses have been issued so far because they're seeing positive results for people who have the virus, and 150,000 tests so far. Finally, Dr. Kathleen Toomey, the state health commissioner, says they're checking for COVID hotspots after all the protests, and they're urging demonstrators and first responders to get tested. Now back to your regular programming.